So one of the most overlooked smartphones that you're gonna find right now, it is the Samsung Galaxy S24 FE. A lot of people get excited about the new S24 models, and I know the Galaxy S25 model is coming soon, but is the Galaxy S24 FE what most of you should consider? Well, I'm gonna give you my thoughts on this in my full review, so let's get right into it. So I really do believe a lot of tech YouTubers out there, they are enthusiasts. They're using the highest tech out there. They're trying to really push the boundaries for themselves because they are in love with tech. But whenever they're trying to really think about the average consumer, sometimes they really miss the boat.
Recommend a laptop for college, something affordable. My recommendation for 70% of students is just to find the cheapest M series MacBook possible. If you can afford an M2 or an M3 Air for $1,000, get that.
So I'm not trying to diss Carter PCs, not at all. I actually like a lot of his content. I'm really just trying to say that we influencers and YouTubers, sometimes we get so enamored with the tech that we like to use every day, $1,000 devices, that it's really easy to overlook the budget segment or even to overlook mid-range phones like the Galaxy S24 FE. And when I look at the Galaxy S24 FE, it's basically the Galaxy S24 Plus, and it really just has a couple minor compromises compared to it, but in exchange, you're gonna save a lot of money. And if you're smart and maybe you know a little bit of loopholes like me, you might be able to save even more. For example, Samsung on their website, they do offer very good trade-in deals. I know I say that a lot and it's only really for the US, but they're offering like $450 if you trade in the Samsung Galaxy S23 FE. Now they don't say that it has to be unlocked. It could technically be locked to a carrier, something like a prepaid carrier, for example, and they wouldn't even care. So if you find a decent version of this phone on eBay or Swappa, you do want to make sure to buy from someone reputable, and I will say there's a little bit of risk with it, but the main point is Samsung will give you almost $200 extra for the phone than what you would pay for it, and that's an easy way to get an extra 200 bucks off the S24 FE. Not to mention with all of the holiday sales that are going to be out over these holidays, I will say the S24 FE is going to be a phone that is going to be discounted, and it's really a phone that you should consider if you find it for the right price. Maybe $650 at its retail price is a little bit too high, and maybe that's true. But if you do look at it overall, you are gonna see it's gonna be a very good value, and I think a lot of people should still consider it. Now, if you look at the design, you're not gonna see much that's really different from the S24 Plus, because this has a bigger screen whenever you're comparing it with the S23 FE. This is a 6.7-inch screen. It's one of the big changes they made to the FE model, and a lot of you might know that the S24 Plus, now that phone does have one of those quad HD screens. It has a nicer resolution on the screen, right? Well, this only has a full HD plus resolution. So you'll get a 2340 by 1080 resolution, and that's really one of the only major compromises from the S24 Plus. And a lot of you are used to that anyway because the S23 Plus was sort of like that. But you're gonna get similar cameras. If you look at the back of the phone, it's gonna look nearly identical, and you get Gorilla Glass Victus Plus on the front and the back, and you're also going to have an aluminum frame to the phone. Now, some people might really prefer the build on the S24 Plus, but honestly, it's not gonna be that different at all. I guess one compromise we could talk about is the fact that this does have an optical fingerprint sensor instead of the ultrasonic fingerprint sensor. Day-to-day usage, it doesn't really mean much to me. It might be ever so slightly slower to unlock the phone, but it's not something that I actually notice. And the speakers, they might be a little bit worse than something like the S24 Plus, but the speakers are still very good, they're very loud, and I did really enjoy them overall. Now, if we move to the display on this phone is still really good. We get 1900 nits of peak brightness, which is absolutely insane. We still get a gorgeous 6.7-inch screen. Again, the resolution is more than good enough. We get 120 Hertz. The display looks great. I know it's not a quad HD display, it's not a 4K resolution or anything like that, but still it's a gorgeous AMOLED display. Samsung is known for their great displays, and this really does stand out. Now, if you are someone that preferred a smaller version of a phone or a smaller FE model, I understand. this phone is not for you, and that's a little unfortunate. A lot of us want smaller phones, and this phone is really just trying to give you a cheaper version of the S24 Plus. So it's a really big phone, but it does look very good for entertainment. And one other little minor downgrade from the S24 Plus is going to be the processor. A lot of you might be worried. It does have an Exynos processor. It's an Exynos 2400E processor, and that might really freak some of you out because some of you just don't like Exynos. But the performance is very, very good here. Basically, if you were to compare the performance in this with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 processor, it's going to be a little bit worse in most categories. So it might be a little bit closer to the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor, but a lot of us, especially a normal everyday user, we're probably not going to notice because the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 processor is very, very fast. It flies through everything you're doing, right? So your average person, unless you're doing super, super heavy, intense stuff, if you're wanting the absolute best phone with the absolute greatest performance, you probably wouldn't be buying this anyway. After all, the Galaxy S25 is going to be out with that Snapdragon 8 Elite processor, which looks absolutely great. And even if the Galaxy S25 doesn't come with that, I know there's rumors that talk about all those things. The point is there's a lot of phones that might be faster a little bit down the pipeline. But if you are someone who wants a phone that is very good and very close to being the fastest, this is going to be right there. It's still going to play most games on higher settings, and it's going to do a very good job with good consistent performance. If you're worried about overheating, I wouldn't be. I'm not saying that it can't overheat, and maybe other people will have a different experience, but for me, using it in normal temperatures, even in the summertime, I was able to really enjoy the phone without thinking it was going to overheat. Like, it was actually fairly good as far as the cooling, at least in my testing. Battery life is great because it does have a 4700 milliamp battery, so the battery was able to last me through the day, and the battery was actually fairly efficient, or the processor seemed pretty efficient overall. So a very good experience as far as battery life. I'm not saying it's the best. Again, the best phones out there will be a little more efficient, maybe with a 5000 milliamp battery. This is just a step below some of those really, really high-end battery lives, but it's still going to be better than some other phones, especially the S23 FE, which had a terrible battery life. This should be a nice improvement for you. Now, this does have wireless charging, 15-watt wireless charging. It does have wired charging as well. Now, it is only 25-watt wired charging, but it's still decent enough, but that is one of the compromises you are going to see. That's really what they're doing with this FE model, right? They might have slightly slower charging speeds, or you might have an optical fingerprint sensor instead of the ultrasonic. They're trying to find really minor ways to cut back and still give you a very, very good phone. But this phone does have Samsung DeX, which is great. And I will say, if we look at other things like the cameras are very, very good. A lot of us have noticed that Samsung pretty much uses the same sensors every single year for their Galaxy S24, the S23, the S22. They've pretty much been using the same type of cameras every year. So the quality hasn't really gotten that much better over the years. It's still very, very good, and Samsung does a great job at the $600, $700, $800 price range. They do a pretty good job with their cameras. But we're still going to get a very similar experience here. You do have a 50 megapixel wide camera. You also have an 8 megapixel telephoto and a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera. Realistically, I know it's not going to be in every single way as good as the S24, the S24 Plus, but it's going to be very, very close, especially the main camera sensor. You're going to get great shots with the camera. So I will say that the S24 Plus, yeah, it's a great phone and everything, but it's going to cost a lot more. And if you find the S24 FE on a really good sale, and that's what I'm expecting, especially with the holidays, you might find it for $450 or $500. $550. If you find it for one of those prices, that's going to be super, super nice, especially if you use those trade-in deals and maybe manipulate things a little bit more in your favor, or maybe you have an older phone to trade in anyway. Like I said, check the links in the description. You're going to get a really nice deal. So this phone, I think it's just so overlooked. And if you want a really good value, I truly believe the S24 Plus is going to be an amazing value for you. I think a lot of people should consider it if they want a phone that is really close to the best, but it's going to provide you a great value. So hopefully this review has helped you out. If you like it, give me a like and also subscribe to my channel. It would mean a lot. Thank you so much for watching my content. I cover a lot of Android phones, a lot of Android tablets, so feel free to stick around on my channel. And if you need anything else, of course, leave some comments and I'll be happy to respond when I can. Have a great day, and I want to say as well, I really hope you enjoy your week.